In this video, crazy lady accuses me of kidnapping my stepson, tries to kidnap him from me. You said stop, so I stopped. And my parents attempt to break up my relationship several times, culminating in the Thanksgiving from hell. Crazy lady accuses me of kidnapping my stepson, tries to kidnap him from me. First, a little backstory. I'm a mixed ethnicity individual. I've been confused for many races over the course of my 29 years on this planet, but I'm literally Caucasian and African American. Usually, it can be figured out, but the difference with me is my father is the Caucasian, so therefore my hair is straight. I'm originally from Texas and am usually confused for being Mexican, but now I live in Massachusetts and I've never had an issue with anyone concerning my race until this day. Also, I'm married to a Caucasian woman who had a child before we were married. His father is not in his life as much, and I took the responsibility because I love this woman and I love this little boy as if he were my own. He's 4 now, and I've been in his life since he was 1. Anyways, on to the story. My wife needed a few things from the grocery store, and she needed to run a few more errands, and usually she just goes and knocks things out herself because I'm usually sleeping. I work nights, but this particular day I happened to be awake, and I offered to go for her. She works hard and does a lot, so I definitely felt it was necessary to do something for her so she could just relax for the day. I took my son with me so she could rest up and just take it easy, and it gave me time to spend with my son for some bonding. We completed all of the errands, which went smoothly, and then headed to the grocery store to finish up our day. My son, being a typical 4-year-old, was full of energy, running ahead of me, laughing, and speaking to everyone he comes across, which I generally don't mind as long as he doesn't hit anyone and stays within eye view. As I'm making my way down an aisle, looking for canned corn, my son jogs to the end of it when an older lady is entering from the other end. My son, being the sweet social butterfly he is, approached and exclaims an excited, "Hi, me 4 and me Ryan." Bless his little heart. The lady looked down and says, "Well, hello there. You shouldn't be running around unattended. Let's go find your parents." I didn't think anything of her statement because I assumed she just hadn't seen me. "Ryan, come back here, bud, please." He excitedly runs back towards me and starts turning in circles because, he's 4. I'm still searching the shelves as this lady walks past me and stops behind me. Again, I think nothing of it because it's a grocery store and you have to share the aisles. I turn my basket around and start to walk toward the front cash registers when this lady literally blocks my path. I say excuse me and try to walk around her, and she moves her cart in front of me again. I honestly thought she was just getting confused and said excuse me once again and tried one more time to go around, and she just blocks my path. The following convo ensues. Me. Sorry about that. We'll get out of your way. Lady. Oh, I don't think so. You're not going anywhere with that child. Me. You mean my son? Lady. That's not your child. He's white and you're Mexican. You probably didn't even know his name until he said it to me. Me. Sure, whatever, lady. Can you just move? My wife is at home and anxiously waiting for us. Lady. Stop your lies. You're not taking him anywhere, you pervert. This whole time, my son is standing close to me holding my leg because he was honestly getting scared. I was getting angry because I hadn't had much sleep and I have a short fuse anyway. Thanks, Dad. Me. As you can see, he's standing close to me because he trusts me and you're scaring him, so how about you buzz off? Lady. No. He's scared because of you. He just doesn't know how to express it yet. She looks at my son. Lady. Come on now, sweetie. I'm here to rescue you. Come with me. Thankfully, my son was able to communicate to her he wasn't going anywhere with her. But she wasn't having none of it. She literally grabbed my son and began to run. It caught me off guard because I honestly could not fathom what was actually happening. My son starts screaming loudly because he was so scared, and this lady is just like, "Don't worry, sweetie. He won't hurt you, I promise." Suddenly, I snap back into reality and I begin to chase after this crazy wench. While running through the store, I yell for people to stop her and that she's kidnapping my son, and thankfully a worker stops her before she makes the exit. Lady, why are you stopping me? This Mexican here is trying to kidnap my grandson. My son literally is bawling his eyes out and extending his arms out calling for me. This lady was relentless and wouldn't let him go even after my son slaps her face multiple times. I laughed a little, not gonna lie. At this point, a manager shows up and asks what's going on. The lady spoke before me. Lady, this, pointing at me, Pervert is trying to kidnap my grandson, and I was just trying to escape. Me. That's my son, you freaking psycho. Now let him go. The manager didn't know what to believe. I don't blame him. He was caught in a weird situation. So I pulled out my phone and showed him pictures of me and my son that dated a year or so back as proof. This lady still wouldn't give up and accused me of faking them. Like, how would you do that exactly? I'll never know, but whatever. Sadly, there were two other ladies there taking the psycho's side and said I was attempting to kidnap my own son because there was no way we were family because of our different skin tones. One even called the police, which I was actually happy about because I knew they'd be able to review the security cameras. Even still, I called my wife to see if she could come to the store to get this situation cleared up quicker. As soon as I told her what was going on, she zoomed to the store. She got there about the same time as the police. The crazy ladies were giving their statement to the cops when my wife walked in. As soon as she walked in, my son goes, "Mama, help!" My wife is a true mama bear, and she immediately flew into a rage when she saw this lady holding her son. Wife, let him go, now! Lady, sorry sweetie, I was just trying to protect him from this pervert over here. Lady 2, yeah, we saw him trying to kidnap him, but this lady saved him. The cop looks at the lady and is confused. Officer, I thought this was your grandson. Wife, I have no idea who that lady is. She takes out her phone and shows the officer a picture of my mother-in-law. Lady, okay, I'm sorry, he's not my grandson, but I was only trying to protect him from this dirty pervert over here. Lady 2, yeah, I witnessed the whole thing. He snatched that child and tried to run away with him, but this lady stopped it. Lady 3, yeah, I saw it too. He needs to be arrested. And you, pointing at my wife, should be thankful that this lady was here to save your son because you obviously just let him loose wherever. Wife, who are you talking about again? All three crazy ladies pointed at me. Wife, oh, you mean my husband? Lady 1, husband? Wife, yeah, who do you think called me and got me here so fast? I presented my ID to the officer and the manager, and my wife did the same. We also each showed pictures of us on our phones to prove we were really a family. The cop nodded in approval and handed us our phones back and jotted down a few notes. The three ladies, for some reason, still kept trying to say this was all fake and my wife was in on the kidnapping and said we needed to be arrested. My wife lost it at this point and let off some beautiful words that I won't repeat here, but she definitely got her point across. Then the nail in the coffin came for the psycho trio. The office turned to the manager and asks, "Officer, sir, do the cameras work here?" Manager, "Yes, we have them inside and out." Officer, "Okay, great. Let's go review." The three ladies' faces went pale, like ghostly pale. The officer reviewed the outside camera as I pulled into the parking lot and saw me taking my son out of my car, and then, as I went up and down the aisles, and most importantly the instance, the woman snatched up my son and began to run. When he returned, he asked, "Officer, would you like to press charges?" Lady 1, "Yes, I would." Officer, "Why would I be asking you that question? Shut your mouth and sit down." He turns to me and repeats the question. Me, absolutely. Lady 1 was charged with attempted kidnapping, false imprisonment, providing a false police report, and child endangerment. The other two were also charged with providing a false police report as well. To make matters worse for Lady 1, my son bruises easily and she left some terrible spots on him from where she was grasping him, but he's fine. This added a charge of child abuse. I've got court later this year, but I'm not sure when because of COVID. The officer said that he would follow up with me in a few weeks. You said stop, so I stopped. A little background. I work in a manufacturing facility as part of a separate R&D group. Generally, I don't do manufacturing, but sometimes my manager gets requests for me to do work for the plant from time to time when my machine's utilization is lower than the plant's and they need a push. Open at the end of last year when I was told I had a job from the plant. Just a small amount of overflow they couldn't handle. 13 pieces. Now, for context, 13 is like 6 months worth of deliverable product for this particular job. 1 to 3 a month from us to the customer. Working in batches of 3 to 4, it can take up to 2 weeks of work to get those pieces off my plate. Multiple machines, processing with metrology in between to make sure I'm hitting the tolerances exactly. Anyway, I've had issues in the past with the plant management not being clear on what the expectations are, and I've steadily been getting more responsibilities from my own boss as I've grown into my position. Not to mention, we're 2 weeks out from the Christmas holiday shutdown. Most of the plant will be off for like 10 days, and I'll be on vacation, not giving a single F about work. So, to make sure we're all on the same page, I call a meeting about the job with the fabrication manager, 2 of the shift supervisors, and my boss, essentially all the people looking to me to get the job done. I have 3 specific requests before I start the jobs. 1. It's the plant management / supervisor's responsibility to let me know the due dates for the parts. Expectation is like we need 2 for January, 3 for February, 1 for March, etc. And it's their job to tell me this with proper lead time, at least 2 weeks, but ideally more, so I can work them into my other duties. 2. I have my own responsibilities that have to come first, so if they want parts from me, they have to give me proper heads up that they need them. I don't work for the plant, and I really don't have time to check in every week to see if they think they'll need parts in the coming weeks. 3. If I don't hear from them, the assumption is they're either ahead on their end of the same job and or don't need the parts from me right now, so I won't be processing them. I spoke to my boss ahead of time about these expectations, and he wholeheartedly agreed. We're doing them a favor, and he has shit he wants me to do for our milestones. Everyone agrees in the meeting, and the main supervisor said up front we need 4 for January. Great. I had a couple weeks before Christmas and a clean plate, so I was able to pump out 6 parts. Half the job was done and over with before I left for my vacation. So pleased with myself. Of course, I worked until December 23rd and nobody was in the plant to receive the parts, but I came back in January feeling like a badass, ready to hand off more than enough to cover them for their due dates through Feb. First day back, and I'm told their plant can't accept the parts from me. They're backed up and I need to hold them until they can release them to the next team for post-processing. Until then, they're in a holding pattern with no idea when they'll need them. Cue malicious compliance. I flat out say, okay, but I busted my ass to get these parts they had to have by January, and I'm not gonna churn out more product until they take the stuff I already finished. I have my own job to do, so now I have 7 parts completely untouched. Well, it's mid-April, and they only took 4 of the first 6 parts from me like a week ago. I haven't touched the other 7 in months, and nobody has come to ask me when they'll be done or indicating they need them by a specific date. I'm going on vacation next week and have a deadline to meet from my department. I just got asked by a different shop floor supervisor. Guy wasn't in the original meeting, and I feel bad for him because they sent him my way knowing I wasn't gonna have the parts or be willing to comply instantly, asking me where the other parts were. My response is I have 2 parts waiting on release to the plant and none of the others are even close to ready. Before he could even try to lean on me to get a few more done, I reminded him I don't work for him or the plant. I'm completely outside his management structure as a whole, and I have my own work to do. He'll get his 2 parts, and then we'll have to renegotiate after I come back from my vacation. My parents attempt to break up my relationship several times, culminating in the Thanksgiving from hell. My parents have long been a pain in my ass, but for now, I'm going to mainly focus on my Thanksgiving from hell and the incidents leading up to it. A few years ago, I met my future wife on an online dating app. We hit it off fairly quickly and the relationship progressed really fast. I was in my late 20s, she turned 30 soon after we met. We both had a good idea of what we were looking for in a partner, and Though I was much more reluctant to introduce her to mine for reasons that will become more apparent. The problems began almost as soon as I told my folks I was dating someone. This was about 6 months into my relationship, as I was reluctant to inform my parents due to the fact that they tried to call the cops on my last long-term girlfriend. Myself, my brother, and my parents were having dinner at a local Mexican restaurant and making small talk. They started asking me questions about my girlfriend, mostly the usual innocent questions. But at some point, I let slip that she was Jewish. Boy, was that a mistake. My parents are hyper-conservative Christians. For years, they had been trying to get me to date a girl from our church, a good friend of mine, but we were never really a match to be a couple, and always expected I would marry someone who was at least Christian. I'm Christian by belief to this day, but I rarely have interactions with the church due to some incidents with the priest. Not that kind of incident, but yet another good story for later. My dad, without missing a beat, told me I should break up with her. He told me that I was gonna marry a Christian girl, and that was that. I was pissed, and I don't remember the full extent of the rest of that conversation, but I told him that I was not breaking up with her, and the rest of the dinner was tense. The next couple of months went by as smooth as you might imagine, but I thought I was slowly wearing them down. At some point, they invited my girlfriend and I over for dinner, and I thought there was finally some progress being made. Nope. They got my brother to distract me in another room of the house while they sat down with my girlfriend and explained why they did not think that she was good for me. They straight up told my girlfriend that she needed to break up with me because I was gonna marry a good Christian girl. They even offered to pay her if she ended up leaving me. My girlfriend politely told them off and we left. Fast forward to November. My family is really big on the holidays, as I know many are, and we had very large extended family gatherings for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think in my entire life, we had only missed one of these events. I wanted to go and take my girlfriend to meet the rest of the family. My parents may have had their heads up their asses, but the rest of my family has always seemed great to me. The event would be at my grandmother's house this year, my mom's mother, with a small gathering for my dad's side the day before Thanksgiving. I talked to my grandmother, who was fine with me bringing my girlfriend up so long as she slept in a separate room. No problem. No way we're gonna be doing the nasty in my grandmother's house anyway. I decided to ask my mother as well. Not that I needed her permission, but I'm an optimist and I hope that she would be on board, and maybe seeing my girlfriend having positive interactions with the family would help the situation. My mother was resistant at first, mainly because she was upset that we were getting an apartment together and didn't want to encourage the relationship further, but eventually agreed. I should also note I set some very clear boundaries with my mother about conversation for this trip, which she brushed off as unnecessary, but I had my guard up nonetheless. We head out to my grandmother's city, and frankly, the first day is nothing but pleasant. My girlfriend gets to meet both of my grandmothers, some of my cousins, and other extended family. We're having a fairly good time, and I think things are actually going to go well. Until my girlfriend and I decide to go to a movie. We're going to see Arrival in theaters. My brother, who's 5 years older than me, wants to tag along. He rode up with my parents. My girlfriend and I came in my car, so my brother has to ride with us to the movie. The three of us sit together, and my girlfriend and I snuggle through most of it. It was a fantastic movie, and the ending made me cry. My girlfriend held me as the credits rolled, but I think all the cuddles had not sat well with my brother, who was single. He got up, and I'll never forget what he said, or the malicious tone in which he said it. Too bad mom and dad will never let you marry her because she's Jew. My brother jogged out of the theater before either my girlfriend or I could muster up a response. We sat there, a bit dumbfounded for a few minutes. Eventually, the house lights went up in the theater and we tried to formulate a plan. I have no idea where my brother is at this point, but he can't go too far considering we drove him. I decided to call my folks, considering I have no clue where he is and really don't want to talk to him at this point. To my surprise, my mother sides with me and tells me it's alright if we just leave him. He can get an Uber back. We half consider it, but we find him on the way out, and my girlfriend, used to dealing with assholes and children in her job, completely cows him with words. He silently rides back with us, we drop him off, and my girlfriend and I go have dinner by ourselves. We debate just leaving, but decide my parents themselves have not crossed any of the boundaries we set, so we'll stay for now. It definitely didn't take them long though. That same evening, I was getting ready to watch some Netflix in bed with my girlfriend. As I walk past the living room, my mother calls me in and complains that I'm not spending enough time with my family. I'm a bit angry at this common manipulation tactic from my mother, but go chat for my grandmother's sake. My mom tries to tell me that my grandmother is upset with me that my girlfriend and I are planning on moving in together before we get married. I decide that my grandmother does not need my mother being a mouthpiece for her, so I sit on the couch, in between the two of them, and face my grandmother. My grandmother and I chat. She's a bit worried about me moving in with a woman while unwed, but we calmly discuss the situation. She doesn't back down on her objection, but eventually concedes that it's my life. She likes my girlfriend and she's happy for us regardless. This entire time, my mother has been constantly trying to butt in on the conversation, but I'm physically putting myself between her and my grandmother, which is just pissing my mother off. Eventually, my father sees sees what's going on and also butts in. Apparently, he can't contain himself anymore and just goes off about everything he sees wrong with my relationship. I can't remember his exact gripes. I likely tuned them out, but I did call him a coward for talking shit behind my girlfriend's back. She was in her room, still waiting on me. This really pissed him off, and he stormed out to fetch my girlfriend. He came back with my girlfriend and proceeded to tear into her in front of me, my mom, and my grandmother, who was mortified that this was really happening in her house. My son will be Christian. His wife will be Christian. His children will be baptized in our church. He was nearly screaming at her. He was also basically accusing her of trying to steal my inheritance by getting knocked up by me, and added some very inappropriate commentary about how he knew my girlfriend was getting older and her biological clock was ticking down. Through the whole tirade, my wife stood there quietly. Like I said, she's used to dealing with assholes and she's tough as nails. Letting him finish up and run out of energy, my girlfriend turned to my grandmother and thanked her for her hospitality before turning back to my father and asking, "Why did you even invite us here if you were gonna act like this?" My dad yelled again, "We did not invite you here. We never would have invited you here." At this point, I gleefully pulled out my phone and showed him the conversation I had had with my mother, where she agreed for my girlfriend to be here. My dad could not find words, but just glared at his wife. At this point, I told him that my girlfriend and I were leaving. It was near 11 p.m., but we packed up my car and left for our hometown. My dad got in one more word before we left, saying, "You two better have broken up by the time we get home. Have a long, hard thought about your future." To which I just laughed as we got in the car. My girlfriend and I drove home on pure adrenaline. We alternated between angry, humiliation, and frustration at the absurdity of the whole thing. This story does have something of a happy ending though. In the days that followed, we got a lot of calls and messages of support from my relatives who I had not told about the incident. Turns out my brother had made some vague social media posts about how sad he was for me and asking everyone to pray for my brother. Apparently, many of my relatives took this to mean I had been hurt and were all calling my mother and father. When my parents were forced to explain the situation, all of my relatives sided with my girlfriend and I. In the months that followed, this incident caused my grandmother to think back on how she had acted with her own daughters. Turns out that my mother had been the only marriage out of 3 daughters my grandmother had approved of. This incident made my grandmother realize that she had acted poorly with her other daughters, and she came to them to finally mend those old wounds. I had no idea, as it always seemed like my grandmother and her daughters had a great relationship, but these were old wounds that had just scabbed rather than really healed. Overall, my family got closer because of this. In addition, my father has had a dramatic change over the course of the intervening years. Once it seemed like we were not going to invite my parents to our wedding, my dad ended up actually being the happiest person there when my girlfriend, now wife, and I tied the knot. This has been helped by the fact that he discovered some underlying mental health issues after that Thanksgiving, and the meds he's using are truly helping him. He started acting like the father I loved when I was a kid. My mother is still a problem, and boy, do I have more stories. But she's mostly behaving because she knows my wife and I can and will block her from seeing her future grandchildren.